We can engineer the absolute perfect evening. You can load up infinite 4K entertainment, pull from algorithmic recommendations tailored exactly to your tastes, and have hyper-palatable food delivered right to your door. Yet, sitting right in the middle of this engineered utopia, you end up feeling nothing, just a mild, heavy numbness. Humans now have access to more pleasure and convenience than at any point in our history. That access has resulted in a total lack of enjoyment. When you lose interest or joy in everyday activities, a condition psychologists call anhedonia, it is easy to blame yourself. This numbness is a perfectly functioning biological defense mechanism. This diagram shows how your brain processes reward. Notice the baseline, followed by a sudden spike. Your brain operates as a difference engine. It does not measure how objectively good your current state is, it only measures the gap between your baseline and a new experience. If you sustain that high level of pleasure, the baseline eventually catches up to the peak. The gap disappears. Because the brain relies entirely on measuring that change in state, prolonged exposure to intense pleasure simply stops registering as pleasure at all. Your biological ability to feel joy remains intact. However, by plugging your difference engine into a world of infinite extremes, you have broken the scale. We are drowning in super stimuli. High-speed video, hyper-palatable foods, and infinite scrolling feeds flood our neural pathways with an unrelenting volume of input. To protect your neurons from this massive overexcitation, the postsynaptic receptors in your brain's reward center physically retract into a protective shell to hide from the flood. Neurobiologists define this specific retreat as downregulation. The brain turns down its own volume to survive the noise. The immediate consequence is that your baseline, the amount of stimulation you need just to feel normal, is pushed to a 10 out of 10 intensity. With your baseline set that high, everyday activities are entirely drowned out. A quiet walk or a good conversation is a 2 or 3 out of 10. Those experiences literally cannot trigger a signal in your brain anymore. This dynamic creates what psychologists call the hedonic treadmill right inside your reward center. You hit a new high, achieve a goal, or buy a new item, and your reward center spikes. But within days, the brain adapts. It treats that new, elevated level as your permanent biological zero. Because your brain constantly normalizes the extreme, you are forced to seek out higher and higher levels of stimulation just to feel completely fine. Our baseline is continuously warped by the curated highlight reels of 8 billion other people. This illustrates relative contrast bias. Your brain compares the modest bar of physical reality to the towering bar of best-case scenarios online. The brain's social pain center measures this massive gap, registering it as status anxiety and delivering a pulse of micropain. This subconscious micropain acts as a literal noise canceller. It mutes the joy of an objectively good real-world experience, like eating a nice meal, because your brain is implicitly comparing it to a Michelin star post you saw 5 minutes earlier. Beyond the social comparisons, engineering these high-level pleasures has become an exhausting cognitive job. When you sit down with 1,000 movies on demand, your brain's value evaluator falls into analysis paralysis. It becomes completely overwhelmed trying to sort through the volume of choices. The stress of potentially picking the wrong option out of thousands triggers a low-level spike of cortisol, the body's primary stress hormone. That cortisol actively cancels out the dopamine of the activity you finally chose. You sit there, unable to enjoy the movie, because your brain is busy grieving the 999 options you didn't pick. Over time, living with this permanently elevated baseline produces severe macro consequences: clinical anhedonia, chronic stress, and eventual mental burnout. This reward system dysregulation is a direct response to a modern environment that is simply too loud. When you feel that emotional blunting, your instinct might be to scroll faster or find something more exciting. That inability to enjoy things is a signal that your system is overloaded. Your brain is begging for a massive reduction in stimuli so it can stop protecting itself. To fix a broken difference engine, you have to look at the baseline. As this chart shows, the biological solution requires intentionally starving the brain of superstimuli. By doing so, you force the baseline to slowly ratchet downwards, back to its zero state. Enduring the temporary discomfort of a low stimulation environment allows hidden neural receptors to emerge from hiding. With the baseline lowered, minor changes in state begin to register again. You achieve this through deliberate practice. You have to halt mind-wandering, practice extreme mindfulness, and engage entirely in present tasks without the distraction of a screen. We do not need to endlessly chase new, extreme joys. We simply need to turn down the volume of the modern world so our brains can finally hear the old ones again.